Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Professor Dr. M. Iqbal Chaudhry, Coordinator General COMSTECH, Dr. Ismail Abdul Hamid, Director Islamic Organization for Food Security, Mr. Sami Sardar, Chief Executive Officer of the Young Business Hub Islamic Cooperation Youth Forum, Excellencies and Ambassadors from OIC member states, distinguished participants, the youth, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. It is indeed a pleasure to be here to welcome the youth from different countries, particularly Kazakhstan-Pakistan and Turkiye Youth Forum today. And I would like to congratulate COMSTECH and IOFS for having organized this. I am also aware that participants from Iraq, Turkey, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Nigeria, and Morocco, Russia, Jordan, Pakistan are physically participating in this event, while more than 800 participants from 35 countries will be joining virtually. COMSTECH has initiated a large number of activities, and in the 57 member states and the four continents. I believe the excitement in the world as far as biotechnology is concerned is not new, has been there, and without biotechnology probably a number of food revolutions and green revolutions which Pakistan is aware of in the 60s could not have happened without scientific breeding methodologies to increase production of rice. For example, International Research Institute from Manila did a lot of work in improving rice yields. Similarly, the genetically modified foods and grains have resulted in increasing yields of different crops. So the first is now how can the Muslim world get involved with it more and more? Because I believe usually it starts from the mind and the intellect. There's an idea, but without an idea, without any instrument to look at that idea, I think it remains philosophical. And then there are some issues in the world which have always remained stagnant, not stagnant, but modified as far as human knowledge is concerned in philosophy. Some things which we may understand, some things we may not. But what is science? Science is that philosophical area which is then brought under human observation by instruments, and then you can conjecture what is the truth and what was just a similar only a conjecture. Imagine Galileo could not have, without the telescope, the idea whether the earth is the center of the universe or not the center of the universe could not have been determined without a telescope. Although human observation just by looking at the sky had been going on in astronomy. So you need an idea, you need instruments, and then you need science, develop science on the basis of ideas, instruments, then further ideas coming out of instruments. And sometimes the data is enormous. Sometimes data accumulation is analyzed even tens of years after the data has been there. So today in the world, what is the most important factor which is leading biotechnology is probably artificial intelligence, the recognition of patterns. The human mind recognizes patterns. I recognize your faces, but there's a limitation to my mind, the memory which I have, maybe not more than 5 GB or so on an average, and there's a limit of the ability of me to recognize faces and put names on it. When you use technology, and the most important part of technology is the recognition of patterns. And in recognition of patterns, the first foray came into facial recognition, for example, and millions of faces were fed, and in 2015 or 16, this science matured. So the recognition of faces, similarly the recognition of patterns in ideas, the recognition of different, the bias which we have is limited to our, for example, is limited to the strength of our own mind. But these biases can be overturned by looking at the big number of information data which comes in. And some biases, depending on how artificial intelligence is written, some biases can be programmed into artificial intelligence. Let us be aware of that. And for example, racial biases can be programmed into artificial intelligence. So I'll come to that as a matter of ethics. As far as biotechnology is concerned, what can be done and what cannot be done has to be deliberated upon. There is tremendous progress, in fact, looking at gene therapy, CRISPR technology, and Cas9, with the help of Cas9, to understand the human genome. Understanding the human genome and then looking at possibilities of mutations, then looking at certain areas in that thread of the genome where you can recognize mutations which cause genetic diseases, and today that interference is being done into the child or into an adult, where carriers of splicing are put into medication and put into the blood to be able to splice that gene out and put mutation out and put a repair sequence in it. It's a huge area. We have just touched the tip of the iceberg. Then comes the fact that you'll have to, again, like I said, you'll have to look at possible ethics, because what you can do and what you cannot do. There's a possibility that, for example, in the improvement of the thinking of the human race, there is the fascist Nazi situation where they would select handsome men and women, intelligent men and women, and to be able to breed them and to come to a more efficient genetic situation. But that would take decades and years and generations to happen. But today, it may be possible to selectively do something. And a selective procedure was done in China, which was then on 2 babies, which was then considered unethical. How much can you do and how much you can't do? But for the Muslim world, I have another concern. Did you know that, for example, in medicine, the dissection of the human body, there were conjectures on what the human body was like, and surgeons would give their input, and there is Islamic knowledge about it. But without looking inside the human body, you could not have understood anatomy at all and diseases at all. The first dissections, scientific dissections, took place in Europe in the 13th and 14th century, and by law since the 15th century. But the Islamic world stayed away from it. There was no fatwa, there was no ijtihad to look at this. And therefore, the first dissection of the human body in the Islamic world happened in Cairo, and the person, and a scientist and a philosopher by the name of Attar, did the first dissection around 1826 or so. So 300 years of resistance is a very important part. What a waste! 300 years of resistance because we could not solve the question of ethics. So that is what concerns me. We should be working along with ethics. Even the Western world, even the scientific world is looking at ethics for what can be done and what cannot be done. So therefore, and similarly, I've been giving examples in the last few days about the fact that the Muslim world thought, despite the fact that there was tremendous progress in Andalus and Anatolia, tremendous progress. But even then, despite that, the Muslim world thought, for example, when the Gutenberg Bible was published in the 14th and 15th century, that the printing press is going to be bad because it would print immoral literature, and the immoral literature will come out. Imagine 300 years of resistance there also. We refused to print books, and therefore we limited knowledge. So my deep concern is the fact that even in Pakistan, you see occasionally, there is a knee-jerk reaction. The courts stopped YouTube for a couple of years. Imagine the loss which may have happened to the scientific community and the youth in Pakistan as far as information is concerned. So when you don't understand an instrument, you don't understand progress. Sometimes the best solution which people find is we don't want to see it, we don't want to hear it, and we don't want to speak it. I think that the Muslim world, it is time for the Muslim world to change attitudes, because if you are going to progress in the new world, if you are going to look at biotechnology in its full spectrums, you will have to reduce your resistances to knowledge. And I will come to some of those areas again. So the tremendous progress can happen in biopharma. The fact that for example, just the fact that research on humans, research on animals, research on humans is a predetermined factor before you can bring a drug into the market or try making it work on humans. The first possible area with the use of artificial intelligence is the drugs which have been approved, for example, but they have other possible usages. And that is where millions of drugs, millions of chemicals can put through these computer algorithms and to search for drugs which have already been tested, but they find different uses. Other than that also, the ability to combine elements, the ability to combine, that's what chemistry has been all about throughout our human history, to look at chemicals which can make gold, for example. So chemistry is a mixing of chemicals. Today, that mixing can take place on an intellectual level without a physical time-consuming factor. In fact, hundreds of years can be saved as long as we keep on developing in this area. Human diseases, the gastric biome has been thought about as one area where major changes as far as longevity is concerned can be brought in. And when Bill Gates of Microsoft came to Pakistan, we had a good discussion on the gastric possibilities of the gastric biome, because I had been reading about it, and Mr. Gates responded by saying that he's investing in, actually Gates Foundation invested in antiviral drug production in companies where it becomes emancipated, where it becomes free for the developing world, rather than a capitalistic run position as far as drugs are concerned, as far as antivirals are concerned, in COVID as well. So he mentioned that he's investing in these gastric biome startups, etc., to make sure that when developments come, they're equally shared by the people of the world. Keep in mind that the COVID vaccine was not equally shared with the people of the world. The COVID vaccine preventions were skewed towards the Western and affordable world. And that is where COMSTECH, OIC comes in, because what you are talking about are ethics and morality, not vested interest. In fact, the world is hungry for ethics and morality-based decisions in world matters. This copyright situation of knowledge never existed in the Muslim world. Knowledge was free. Knowledge was available. It is the resistance of the Muslim world itself when it started accepting knowledge which was being developed by other nations. But other than that, the Muslim world was open as far as knowledge is concerned. So this concept of copywriting knowledge and ensuring the fact, this is some kind of a neo-colonialism, ensuring the fact that you can't, even in dire need, you can't copy something to prevent diseases, is a very dangerous trend. So that is why the Islamic morality, that knowledge is the knowledge looking for God, the knowledge is of God's creations, the knowledge cannot be copyrighted. So therefore, that is another matter of ethics which the world will have to look, but who will provide the leadership? The leadership is provided by those people who are ahead, who lead in these matters. The leadership cannot be provided by followers. Those who are ahead discover things, discover lands, then it is up to them to exploit those lands with their immorality, exploitation, loot and plunder, or it is for them to spread the message of Islam, the message of the fact that for the benefit of mankind, these things have to be free and have to be open. So let me talk to you about areas where, like I mentioned, the gastric genome, and the fact that a lot of studies are being done in longevity. And Peter Diamandis is a gentleman who has set up a Singularity University and looking at longevity factors, makes a very interesting statement in his book also. And he says that there is so much development going on that don't do anything foolish and die in the next 10 years because your life is going to be extended by what will be available. So this biotechnology issue is touching every aspect of humanity. Look at food and agriculture. I'm making a statement in Pakistan for quite a few days that Netherlands something to learn for the Islamic world. That Netherlands, a country which is 19 times smaller than Pakistan, leads the world as far as food products are concerned. It is number 2 as far as food products are concerned. So that means the opportunity in Pakistan and a lot of countries of the Muslim world who have huge lands, the opportunity, the fact that you can feed the world, you can feed yourself. I believe the biggest technological innovation is going to come around where mankind would be able to feed itself very comfortably. It's not going to be a stretch situation, because we are learning vertical farming, we are learning water alone farming. What is that called? Hydroponic or something? Hydroponic. Water alone ability to farm without land and to have products 2 times or 3 times the product. Research in this area is very important. In fact, only 3 days ago, I was reading about an article about the fact that in soybean, the fact that the plant, when the sun is around, the plant leaf triggers itself to photosynthesis, and as soon as shade comes around, as soon as a cloud comes over, it takes about 15 or 20 minutes to then get out of the cycle of production, to switch off photosynthesis or reduce its level. And as soon as sun comes around, it is 15 minutes or 20 minutes delayed to switch on photosynthesis. And just by modifying the genes in these plants, they were able to switch on and switch off photosynthesis faster, resulting in a 10 to 20% yield improvement. So what more can you think of? It is your own ideas in the mind which will stop you. The more you have ideas, the more technology is available, the more science is available, you can bring up a huge revolution in biofertilizers, in, for example, in pesticides, genetically modified foods, making them safe, rice, maize, and wheat, something which Pakistan needs. Our production per acre yield is about half of that of Australia, and a fraction less, probably half the same compared to China, and less than even India. So some things need to be done scientifically to make yourself strong. With global warming, with these floods, we know that a lot can be done by understanding patterns, weather patterns, etc. And the more global warming is around, the more we need to work hard in these areas, including marine biology. Can you imagine? I did a report when I was a member of the National Assembly that Pakistan's stock of fisheries has gone down tremendously, in some areas almost 90%. Because what we do, we catch the bacha fish, we catch the small fish, just born baby fish, and use that for chicken feed. We destroy the next generations, and therefore there is a serious depletion of fish stocks around Pakistan. We need to make nets which allow these newborn fish to go out. We need to do a lot more. Some policies, you see, the faster the Muslim world and the faster my country can adopt sciences which have existed for the past 20 or 30 years, the faster we will change. But there is a resistance. I am giving you one example of a resistance which is a political example. But I am seriously concerned by why decision makers are not adopting technologies. I am a strong proponent, for example, of the electronic voting machine. And countries who needed it have brought it in when there is a resistance in Pakistan. The fear that something can happen. For example, the fact that rape incidents have been looked at with the help of DNA to find the culprit is a science development. Witnesses, DNA is far more accurate than eyewitnesses. There was an article in Scientific American looking at the potential of witnesses. Most of the witnesses can remember 60% in the first identification parade, and in the next they only remember 10 or 15%. So the CCTV cameras help you. That is where technology comes in and you adopt. Countries that don't adopt technology, number one, you are not the leaders in technology. Number two, the easiest thing which has been given to you is that technology exists and you have access to it. And countries which still then refuse, for example, you don't adopt the printing press. Countries that still then refuse are destined to stay behind. That is where, sir, your leaderships are important. That is where you lead. You lead with passion. You don't lead with similar routine lectures. You have to create passion in the youth of Pakistan and the youth of the Islamic world. The passion that knowledge is available, that the passion that it is in your grasp, the passion that you should have hunger for knowledge. It's not going to come to you. It's not going to be fed in your mouth and in your ears and into the brain. I wish the time will come. For example, the fact that today the more important factor as far as my education was concerned as a dentist or a doctor was the fact that I had to memorize the diseases, their symptoms, the ability to diagnose and have a differential diagnosis. Today, I don't have to have a memory because it is accessible in seconds, much more detailed than what could I ever recollect. The ability now, today, is intellectual decision making. That is important. You make the right decisions, and I wish the leaders in Pakistan and the leaders in the Muslim world make the right decisions for progress. Countries which still don't, and I can give you examples. The last time I gave an example of Lithuania and Estonia, both got liberated from the Soviet Union at the same time. Estonia today, both got liberated at the same time. Estonia made better decisions in the IT and has a far bigger footprint in IT than many countries in the world. A very small country, even a far bigger footprint even compared to Pakistan. So therefore, I believe in marine biology, the blue sector, that has tremendous possibilities of bioengineering and biotechnology. And finally, I would like to end by bringing forth to you that the world today is exploitative still. The colonial system where armies went into and regimes went into different countries and exploited and ruled over the world, it went away. Then the neo-colonialism started. Then the neo-monetary colonialism started, where the slope of the looted wealth was towards the Western world. I have come to this conclusion that ethics and morality need a base, need an anchor. And it cannot come from any source except religion, and then too only Islam can give that ethics and morality. The world is hungry for that. The world is looking for leadership, the ethical leadership in those areas. And the world is looking for knowledge, and that is where young minds like you must lead the way. And leaders of different countries, and in my last year's 10 books, I cited 3 books which I feel are very important for decision making, where the new era of exponential growth is taking place, while our thinking of the decision makers and people who gray out is still linear. So we have to go into an exponential time frame in all areas, including biotechnology. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It was a pleasure to talk to you. Assalamu alaikum.